Okay, and we are live. Hi everyone. I'm Marianne. I am a licensed insolvency trustee with Allen Marshall and Associates, and I'm also known as Dr. Debt because I help people have happier, healthier finances. And I noticed there's a little delay with my video, so hopefully that's not going to be too distracting for everyone, and maybe it will catch up as we go along. So we are talking about help. Where should I save my money? Choosing between a savings account, a tax-free savings account, and RRSPs. And so I am very excited to have my guest on with me today, which is Maureen Babin from Amarack Financial Services. So I'll just pop your name up there. And I've known Maureen for a very long time. I mean, not that long because we're not that old, of course, right? Wink, wink. So I've known Maureen for a long time. We have worked together. She's my financial planner. We are friends. And no matter how much she tries to educate me on this, I still forget and I still get confused. And so I thought this would be a worthwhile topic to bring out to everyone. And so anyone listening or watching, I should say, please feel free to say hi in the comments. And if you have a question, make sure you post it and we will answer it here. All right, Maureen, I'm going to give you some intro questions. So how long have you been in the investment business?
Well, you're friends for a long time, but not going to say how long. I did the math this morning because I figured you'd ask that question. This is my 50th year in business.
Oh my goodness. So you started when you were 2?
Yeah. Not quite, but
Yeah.
I did start at a young age, actually at 16.
Okay. Wow.
So
wow. 50
60.
years in the business. I bet that you have seen a lot. Have you seen a lot of changes in the industry over that period of time?
Oh my gosh. Yes. Everything was done by hand when I started. I started working in the banks, and you had, in November and in May, we would calculate interest and post it to the accounts. The tellers were at the wicket with white gloves on, dealing with money, dirty money, while they're smoking cigarettes.
Oh my gosh.
We've come a long way. Yes.
That seems so foreign. Yeah. And I've been in this industry. I started in the insolvency industry in 1988. As an insolvency receptionist. So I always joke, it's not really a joke, it's actually a true story, that I applied for an insolvency receptionist position. I had to look up the word insolvency in the dictionary. And I read it and thought, that doesn't sound like very much fun. And it's been, so where am I? I'm 24, 5 years in, and there's never a boring day in this industry. So, but when, as you were talking, I remember sitting at my desk smoking. Not a smoker anymore, but I remember sitting at my desk smoking, and I remember typing out the forms and on our IBM computer. So that just seems like so foreign and so long ago when you think about it now. Yeah, lots of changes in 50 years, and lots of investment, I suspect, like, fluctuations. My gosh, 50 years is a big span in terms of investments.
Yeah, exactly. And there's a lot of new products, a lot of new inventions, and sometimes they're bringing back the old again. So it varies for certain.
Interesting. Okay, so what made you get into this line of business?
Well, I was in high school, and they had work placements at the end of the school year. And I was assigned to Bank of Nova Scotia on Spring Garden and Breton Street. And they asked me to stay. So that's how I started my career. And had no idea what I was doing because I was 16, a high school kid, but I was put in as the branch accountant.
Oh my gosh.
So it was quite the learning, and it's quite the experience. I mean, it was even to the point where we used to bag the money. We would have the candle, the wax, and the seal to seal the bag. So, we had counted the money. So I was just wrapped up in the whole thing. I loved it. And I stayed in the banks for about 21 years, and then I went out on my own. I've been out on my own ever since.
Wow. Okay. Sealed the envelopes with wax. That's definitely going back in time. It's amazing to me how things change in, a 30, 40, 50 year span. It doesn't, you know, being in my 50s, it doesn't seem like it was that long ago, but my gosh, the changes that we've seen have been crazy.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and
Absolutely.
astounding. And
Yes.
last question on that, what do you love most about what you do?
Right now, where I'm self-employed, I own my own business. I have the freedom, and I love the freedom that I can pick the clients that I want to deal, that I want to work with. I love making a positive difference. I like making a change in somebody's life. That means the most to me. So you're
Yeah.
not a number with me.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I certainly admire about you is that, and that you really do care about your clients, and you know that really does come through. I'm gonna ask you a question, and then I forget to close my door, so I'm gonna go do that because I hear some
Sure.
background noise. We've heard a lot about tax-free savings accounts lately, and there seems to be some confusion around when someone would put money there versus their RRSP or just a plain old savings account. But we're going to kind of come to the basics. See, there's that background noise. We're going to start with the basics, and just tell us what a tax-free savings account is. I am going to mute. I'm just going to walk away for a second, but I'm still here.
Okay.
I'll be right back into the screen.
Sure. Well, a tax-free savings account, you hear a lot of people call it a TFSA, which is just the abbreviations for it. And just a little bit of history. Tax-free savings accounts began in 2009. And what happens with a tax-free savings account? You can have any type of investment in it. The thing being is any interest it makes, you don't have to pay tax on. So you will never have to be taxed on any money you save. Now it's registered with CRA, so there's limitations. And I'm not going to give you how much each year, but from 2009, you're allowed to carry forward any amounts of money you did not use in the tax-free savings account. So right now, if you had $75,000, you could pop it into a tax-free savings account, and any money it makes, you would never have to pay tax on it again. So that is a tax, and they're used primarily for savings and for saving for whatever purpose you want, but they're used pretty much as a savings account. So different scenarios, and I can give you an example or two in a bit of the difference between when you would use a tax-free, when you would use an RRSP.
Yeah, perfect. So, so before we do that, then that is, you know, and you kind of answered this, but again, I want to keep it really simple. So, you know, how is that different from an RRSP? In other words, you know, just give us the basics on what an RRSP is.
Sure. An RRSP, Registered Retirement Savings Plan, is an account. Again, it's registered. And what an RRSP does, you can invest your money, you can grow your money. And I have a cat sitting on my desk. I am so sorry. Let me just get a few things that I changed out of the way. Max, scoot. So it's a tax deferral. Yeah, there, I got them out of the way. It's a tax deferral. So what happens? It's not. People say, you know, I'm getting money back from the government. You're getting your own money back. So if you're in a higher tax bracket, say for every $1,000 you put into an RRSP, you're going to get back your taxes of about $400. So it's a tax deferral. With the tax-free savings account, it's tax-free. So any money you make, you don't have to pay tax. So that's pretty much the difference between.
Okay. So, and I'm going to summarize just because it keeps my head straight, and then, you know, certainly anyone kind of popping on as we're talking. So, so tax-free savings account, you're not getting to claim that. So you don't get additional tax back at refund time. And then when you take it out later, of course, you're not taxed on it. So it's just, you know, in essence, it's savings, but it's savings in an investment, right?
That's right. Exactly.
Okay. Whereas an RRSP, when you put it in that, you are getting a tax break. So you are getting to claim it. You are going to get more of a tax refund using the RRSP. But when you take the money out, you're going to be taxed on it.
You're going to be taxed. And RRSPs began actually in 1991. I was there for it. And
it's only been that like short a time frame?
Yeah. Yes. It's not even that long. So with an RRSP, there's limitations of how much you can put into an RRSP. So you can put in 18% of your earned income to a maximum. And for this year, the maximum is $27,000, I think it is. Yeah, almost $28,000. So what happens with an RRSP, the same as with tax-free savings account, say in 1991, you had an RRSP limit you could put in of $5,000, but you didn't. That carries forward to the next year, to the next year, to the next year. So there's substantial amounts of RRSP money that you could put in. So if you look on your tax assessment, your notice of a tax assessment, you look on the very back page, it will tell you how much money you can put into an RRSP. And it will also tell you how much money you can put into your tax-free savings account. Again, they're registered, so CRA knows what's going on with them.
Why are there limits as to how much you can put into each?
Because the people who are in a larger tax bracket get a better break from an RRSP, but they're registered because they're getting that break. I think that was your question.
Yeah. And, and I guess it was because now, mind you, I think there's a large percentage of people, and maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I would think there's a large percentage of people that don't take advantage of their
absolutely.
limits. Is that what would you guesstimate as a percentage of people who don't use their maximum percentage?
I would say that don't use the maximum. I would say it would probably be 75%.
Yeah, the majority, right? So the limit is put in place so the people who actually have lots of money and can put lots of money into it don't, for lack of a better term, quote unquote, abuse it.
Right, exactly. And that's why those limitations are there. And you're penalized if you put too much money in. So if you
didn't know that.
Yeah. And you're
so for the 25% that actually applies to, how are they penalized? What does that mean to them?
They have to get it out of the RRSP. They have to withdraw it. That creates a tax problem. Revenue Canada will also charge you a penalty, and they could charge you an interest, a fee.
Okay. So don't go putting money into your RRSP willy-nilly, people who can do that and go past your limits. Make sure that you're keeping track and you have someone advising you and you know what you're putting in.
Exactly. You may be able to, now I haven't checked it lately, but you could go over by $2,000, but you're monitored very closely and you're probably flagged. So I'd be very cautious. And it's a nightmare trying to get it out.
Interesting. Okay. All right. So that's really helpful. So, so the next logical question is, when does it make sense to put money into one versus the other? And I suspect there's lots of various reasons. So maybe we can let's start talking about some of those.
Okay. Well, here's one example. Say Joe, we'll use Joe. He's 45 years old and he's saving for retirement. His income is really high, so he's in a high tax bracket. But what I would do with him is when he retires, we're going to have him in a lower tax bracket. So he's not going to be paying as much income tax. So an RRSP would be his best option in this case. So he could be saving with the RRSP, saving for retirement. He's getting money back, so he's getting a refund, or he's decreasing his tax bill while he's in the higher bracket. Now we retire him out, so we flip it around. So now his income is going to be lower. So he's not going to be in that high tax bracket anymore. So he can afford, to live, have enough money for retirement, and not pay a large amount of taxes. Okay. So that's part of the planning strategy.
So I suspect there's a few caveats with that. So I'm going to kind of pick this away in a couple different things. First of all, someone who does that is getting a tax break, which means they're getting more income tax back. Would I be safe in saying that what they do with that income tax refund can maybe not make that beneficial or not beneficial, but certainly make it more beneficial?
Absolutely. And what I would do with a lot of people, a lot of my clients, I'll say, okay, we're going to put, $15,000 into an RRSP, and you're going to get back about $4,000. So let's not go crazy or go to Jamaica or any of those things. Let's take that money, put it back into the RRSP again. So then your contribution for next year is pretty much covered from your refund from last year. And it's like a snowball going down a hill. It's going to gather momentum. It's going to compound better.
Excellent. So it kind of reminds me of putting money into education savings plans. Now, it's not the same thing, but it's reminding me of it because, the more I put in, the more I benefit from the grant money and, the money the government puts in. It's kind of like that, except you're using your own money, but you're
Right.
basically taking that benefit, you're investing it back in, you're getting more bang for your buck, and then of course you're
Mhm.
getting more of a refund, and you're investing it back in, and so that's that snowball effect.
Yeah, absolutely. So here's
Now,
another.
well,
Oh,
before we
sorry.
go on to that one, sorry, I want to
Yeah.
ask. I'm going to jump in with my trustee hat on, because
Mhm.
obviously, people come to me who are struggling financially. They have a lot of debt. Sometimes balancing that, the paying off debt, putting money into an RRSP, or taking their tax refund and reinvesting it versus paying off debt. So I'm curious, when it might be advisable. What's the balance there? So someone is getting a tax refund, they are carrying a high debt load. Do they use that to pay off their debt first and then reinvest more in the RSP? Would you recommend a balance? What are your thoughts on that?
It depends on the amount of the refund, and it depends on the amount of debt, and it depends on the interest rate on the debt. So if you have credit card debt, which is what most of them start at 19 and 3/4, then we would look at the difference. I would run a tax program and look at the difference to see what's going to be to the benefit of that client. So each situation is different, but in most cases, if I have somebody who's, a modest income, but a high debt, we would take that refund and pay the debt down.
Yeah. So it can definitely be used as an overall strategy and an
Yeah.
overall plan. And this is where you come in,
Yeah.
and why, I will always ask, my clients when I'm dealing with them, and they're looking at, because if someone comes to me and they're struggling financially, it's all about getting their finances on track so that they can achieve their future goals. And so for,
Right.
many people, the future goal is the, dangling carrot is retirement, and having a plan in place for that. And so, I'm a huge advocate of, talk to someone, know what your plan is, revisit it, look at it, explore options. And in a case like that, depending on the situation, if the interest is really high on their debt, it may make
Right.
sense to just aggressively pay that off. And then that frees up their debt payments so they can put more money towards retirement.
Absolutely, absolutely. And
Yeah.
just on another side note, a lot of people, a lot of my generation, the 65 and up. I'm not retiring, by the way, either. So
Good.
I love what I do. I love what I do. So I have no interest in retiring. But Canada Pension was revamped. It was in 1961 or 1967, and it was designed to replace 25% of your income. So I hear a lot of people saying, the government's going to pay for me. I'm going to live from the government. Well, you're probably going to
Mm.
live on $13,000 a year. That's likely it. And that's taxable.
Wow. Yeah. And you know what? I see that all the time. And like I said, I've been in the industry since, 1988. There has
Right.
been a lot of changes. And one of the, I think, most disturbing things that I'm seeing is more and more people, older people coming in looking at, bankruptcy or some kind of debt solution
Right.
in retirement, and, 80 years old, and mortgages on homes, and
Mhm.
it's heartbreaking. And not only that, but people trying to survive on government pension only. I mean, it is
Right.
not a comfortable income. You are not living comfortably. Oftentimes, you're not even surviving.
Right.
I'm a huge fan of individuals having their own retirement savings, to some degree, whatever that is for
Mhm.
them. It's different for everyone, and keeping those funds intact. I'm going to talk
Right.
about that a little bit later. I just made a note here. We'll come back to that just because I think it's so important. So, give me another
It's very
example of when someone might choose one over the other.
okay. Here's Joe's wife, Jill. She's the same age, but she owns a small business.
Mm.
So her income is low now because she's just starting out. But she wants to start saving for retirement. I don't think it's worth her while right now while her income is really low. So she's not going to get that 40% tax deferral back at this point in her age and her income. So what I thought the best option for her would be a tax-free savings account.
Mm.
So she can still save. So she's getting into that routine. She's getting her power. As her business grows, will look at that point and see whether an RSP is going to be worth her benefit, because it's still always carrying forward her balance. She's never lost any balance of what she could put into an RSP. So now she's making great money. She's in a high bracket, 5 years, 10 years later. We can take that money out of the tax-free savings account, no penalties, Any money it made while it was in there, we can take that as well. No fees, no penalties. And we can start with an RSP for her. So that's just another way of using a tax-free savings
Awesome.
account, kind of
So
using it
you
like a
can,
holding bank.
yeah, I was just going to say, you can use it temporarily as a holding. I mean, you can always change your mind later and take the money and put
Right,
it into our, I never even thought of that. So, it's not like that option is gone. It's just that
right,
it's not the best one for you now, but that might change.
right. You know,
Yeah.
if you put in $1,000 into an RSP and you're making 18,000, we can wait. It's, because you're not going to get the best bang for your buck. So we'll wait.
Mm.
It's going to carry
Yeah.
forward. We're never going to lose that limit. It's only going to grow.
Awesome. Whereas,
Yeah.
I'll play devil's advocate, because if you put the money in an RSP, then you can't just withdraw. Well, you can just withdraw it and put it in a tax-free savings account, but there's some issues
You're
with that,
taxed.
which we were just talking about, because you're taxed.
Right.
And so, and not only that, and this is where I see, just talking about long-term and retirement planning, is I'll see people who are taking out their RSP money to pay debt or for living, and they take it out in large amounts, and there's never enough tax withdrawn, and so they end up with this really big tax liability from Canada Revenue, which they weren't anticipating. I don't know if they missed the piece of advice that says there's not enough tax taken out, or if it's not really told. Everyone's not told that, but I think it's something that if you're going to take money into your RSP, talk to your tax preparer or your financial advisor and figure out what the tax implications are going to be and factor that in, because I see this
Absolutely.
over and over and over again.
And what
Yeah.
I suggest clients when they come to me saying I want to withdraw $15,000 or whatever, there's limitations. So it's called withholding tax, which is the same as your paycheck. They're withholding your income tax. So if you take under 5,000, it's 10%. They'll hold back. If you take, I think it's up to 10,000, it's 20%. And if it's 15 or over, thereabouts, it's 30. Don't quote me on those, because I know they're different. But you add that on top of your own income, you're looking at a tax bill.
And that
So I
doesn't
see
take
it.
into account levels of income, does it? So
Right.
someone in a higher
No.
tax bracket is still going to pay that as someone in a lower. And so
Yes.
it's very misleading in a way.
Very misleading. Absolutely. Absolutely. And what
Yeah.
I normally will tell the client is, okay, December 30th, let's withdraw $5,000 out of your RRSP.
Yeah.
January the 6th, we'll take another 5. So
Yes.
we just split the tax years.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that helps as well. So
Yeah, I was going to say exactly that, because I've had people come in and they want to take out, they've applied under the hardship clause and they're taking out, I don't know, $40,000 to pay their debt off. And,
Right.
and they were going to take it all in 1 year. And I'm like, wait a minute, like, just wait and take half of it out before December 31st, and then take the other half out at the first next year. So at least you're going to split that income into 2 years and not be hit with as high a tax debt.
Exactly.
Yeah, because there is, and I'll just do my little note here. So major tip number 1, I think we already had about 3 of them, but major tip number 1, I'm going to say, don't owe Canada Revenue any money.
Ever.
It's, generally speaking, a nightmare, and their penalties and interest are greater than any creditor you'll ever have.
Yes.
And their collection rights are greater than any creditor or collection company will ever deal with. So if you can avoid it, simply do not owe CRA. That's my one big takeaway.
Exactly. They have right of expropriation. They have right of expropriation, so they can do whatever they want. They can freeze your bank account and then send you a letter to say, we just froze your bank account last Tuesday.
Yeah, there's no heads up. There's no warning. It's, I often describe that, I use the Monopoly game when I'm talking about various things with your finances. And, owing Canada Revenue is one of those instances where it's do not pass go, do not collect $200, go directly to, in this case, bankruptcy, not jail. And, but the point being is that, it's the move is made. And by the time the move is made, you really don't have time to react. And it's the balls are in place, emotions are in place, and often backs people in a corner where their options are very limited. Whereas if they if they look at some options before that, we can talk to CRA or potentially, negotiate something or give them some advice on how they can negotiate and kind of head it off at the pass before it becomes a big issue.
Now, I have a question for you with
Yeah.
your bankruptcy. If there is a large CRA or if there is a CRA debt, will it be taken away in bankruptcy?
Yes, and the only reason I hesitate in saying yes is because, of course, there are circumstances where that's not true. Generally speaking, yes. So income tax debt is considered, an unsecured debt that's included in bankruptcy. We run into a lot of business people who have director's liability, so HST. Payroll falls on them if something happens to the business or the Canada Revenue can't collect from the business, and that's included. However, if Canada Revenue Agency takes measures to collect before a bankruptcy or consumer proposal, and they do certain things, so one of them being register a lien against someone's property, they become a secure creditor, and if they're a secure creditor, that's not going to be released. And I will even add, you can see where this is multi-layered, because I'll even add that sometimes it is, or sometimes part of it is. Or if they've garnished someone's wages and they do something called an enhanced requirement to pay, which just means they've taken some very specific steps to collect money from third parties on an individual, that can last even through to bankruptcy for a certain period of time, and they can still do the garnishee. So those are a few examples. And then the big one, and I've just run into this with two of my individuals that I've helped through a bankruptcy and a proposal in the last year. Canada Revenue has something called Section 160 of the Income Tax Act. And what that means is, and I'm going to use layman terms, they can follow the money, so they can go after the money you owe them from some other party that you have benefited in some way. So, example, you run a business, you don't pay your HST. And but during the time frame that you owed the HST, you put money into your spouse's house. So the house is in your spouse's name. Or you give money to your daughter for her wedding, you pay for it. It's $20,000 wedding and you pay for it. Or you have a joint bank account with your mother and you put money into that account, and your mother uses it to live on. Canada Revenue in those instances can go after those individuals for the amount you owe them. It's a very powerful option that they have, and a very stressful one for the individual on the receiving end.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like I said,
so thanks for bringing those up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. All right. So you have another example for us, or do you want me to go into my questions?
Yeah, go into your questions.
Okay. So kind of along the same lines, because you gave us a couple of good examples, and I mean, I know there's probably, 50, but I wanted to just kind of ask some specific things. So, I guess I've always thought that tax-free savings accounts are better for short-term savings that you need access to, and RRSPs are better for long-term savings that you're going to leave there. But yeah, I'm beginning to understand that that's not true. So can you just speak to that?
A tax-free savings account has limits on it, right? So if you put it in just to take it out again, then you're never going to get that limit back. So I don't like it as a short term. If it's a short term, I would just put it in a savings. Tax-free savings account and the RRSP have tax benefits on both of them and in different avenues. So I would use that more or less for long term.
Okay, like that's really helpful. Yeah, because so what you're saying is, let's say your limit in tax-free is 10,000. I don't know. Again, I'm just throwing a number out there, and you put 10,000 in, but then you take the 10,000 out. So you can't then put that, you've lost that 10,000 that you put in.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. So that's 10,000 that you'll never get back. That could go forward into prior years and make money and be tax-free.
Okay, interesting. I'd actually not heard that piece before. I do just wanted to mention, anyone who is tuned in, if you have a burning question about tax-free savings accounts or RRSPs or savings accounts, which we're going to kind of flip over and talk about that too in a moment, just put them in the comments and we will answer them here. Or if you're listening to the replay, just put them in the comments and one of us will answer there or get back to you directly. So that's the other question. When does it make sense to simply just put money into a savings account, which we know the return on savings accounts is horrendous? I think both of us have seen instances in our career times where that was not true and you got decent rates. What's the highest rate you've seen in savings accounts over your career time?
10% was always good. 14% back in when we had the recession in the 80s, we had mortgage interest rates of 21%.
Yeah, I remember those days. I can't even fathom that now.
Exactly. I mean, people are panicking if the mortgage rate is.
I feel like we would just implode if that happened. Like it would just, everything would just fall apart. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I completely agree. So
when
I would use a savings account, I would use a savings account when I'm looking for something that's short term. Like say I'm looking at an emergency fund. I would likely just put it in a savings account because your car is going to break down eventually and you're going to need it. So I wouldn't put it in the tax-free because you lose that tax-free benefit. I wouldn't put it in a GIC. They're terrible rates. They don't even make 0.5%, and you're locking yourself in for a year or whatever. So that's when I would use a savings account. So I would use it as an emergency fund, maybe for your car, your maintenance. But I would take it off of my access card. So you don't want an emergency fund and be dipping into it. The same as you don't want a car account and be dipping into it, because when the emergency happens, you're not going to have any money. So
yeah, I'm gonna jump in here because I'm so glad that first of all, I'm so glad that you called an emergency fund, because I often talk about the difference between an emergency fund and what I call an occasional expense account, but is also called a reserve fund. And to me, there is a difference. So an emergency fund, if you think of an emergency, really it's something unexpected.
Right.
So not something you anticipated happening. If you have a car, it's going to break down.
Right.
If you have a house, it is going to need maintenance and repairs. If you have pets, they are going to go to the vet. I'm trying to think of a few others. If you have kids, they're going to drain your finances. No, maybe that was a little unfair, but maybe not. So to me, those things are anticipated expenses, and I try to teach those that I work with to anticipate those. So what did you spend on your car last year for maintenance repairs? What did you spend on the vet? What are some things that you anticipate coming up for the house? What is it going to cost you? How much do you need? Put that money aside. And I agree with you completely. Have a separate account. Don't have in your regular funds. If you can limit access to make it just a little more challenging, but you still need to be able to get it in a day, just get that stuff somewhere else.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's when I would use a savings account. I would use the tax-free savings account, and I would use the RRSP when I'm doing like long term, so I can take advantage of the benefits that they supply. Yeah.
So another advantage of I know there's a little bit of a delay, so I'll talk, and sometimes it takes a second. The other thing with the tax-free savings account that I was just thinking of was because it gives you money that you can withdraw out at retirement. You're not taxed on it. So then you're avoiding some of those things we said, like, paying big amounts of tax because of what you're taking out. But also there's a few other benefits of that. And some of the pitfalls I've seen people fall into with RRSPs, for example. So someone in retirement, they take withdrawal out for whatever reason they're taking it out. It puts their income up. All of a sudden they potentially lose the guaranteed income supplement.
Guaranteed income supplements. Exactly.
Right. Yeah. Or what else? What are some other things that potentially they might lose? Grants. Well, there's some grants.
A lot of grants, for seniors. There's an oil. If you have an oil furnace, there's an oil rebate. Yep. There's a maintenance rebate. I don't know if they're all contingent upon your income, but many of them are. And then too, there's different grants for repairing your house. So if your income's too high, that's going to make a difference of what you will get for those grants. And the other thing I find too is if it's a tax-free savings account, you don't get a T3 or T5. You don't get an investment income statement. So you don't have, those aren't recorded. So by not taking it out of the RRSP for, to fix the roof or something, to that, if you had to do it, fine. But knowing that for the next year, your income, your retirement income is likely going to be lower because you won't qualify for those benefits because the government income tests it every year.
So it almost seems to me like a retirement planning strategy, really a mixture of the both makes sense because,
Right.
most people think they're going to put money in an RSP and they're going to leave it there and they're just going to use it for retirement income. And it seems to me that's the best use of it, where you control what you take out based on your plan and assuming your plan works out. But as we know, life doesn't always work out as planned. In fact, life seldom works out as planned. And so if something happens in retirement, you need some access to more funds. Taking out of your RSP really has more disadvantages than advantages. That's where the tax-free savings account would come into play.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. And am I safe in saying, I think I've seen this as well, where depending on, how long someone works and what they have for pension income and what they've put in their RSP, that sometimes they're in a situation where they almost can't withdraw their RSP money. And I don't know if I want to say they risk losing it because it goes to their state, but they don't get the benefit and use of it because of the effects of withdrawing too much in the years they have left. Does that make sense? Do you know what I'm saying there?
It does. But again, if you're sitting down with your planner, with your advisor, you may want to look at maybe having a spousal account. You may want to look at, so that the spouse will have a plan, a pension plan, but you're getting the tax break. You may want to look now when you turn 71, the year you turn 71, December 31st of that year, if you don't get that money out of the RRSP and into a RIF, a LIF, or a LORA, you're taxed. Revenue Canada considers that cashed and taxed out. So every situation is different, but keep in mind when you're taking the money and putting your money rather into the RSP, you're getting an immediate break or a deferral on your taxes.
Yeah, people forget that by the time they get to retirement.
Exactly. Now I'm taxed. Yes, but you receive the tax deferral,
which is why it's so important to use that tax deferral in the best way possible, because we do have short memories and we do forget, and you want to really leverage that so you're getting the most, pun intended, bang for your buck during that time, so it is less painful when you're paying the tax later. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And I've had situations where I've had clients saying, I'm retiring, I'm taking 50,000 out of my RRSP and I'm paying all my credit card bills. And, to me, it's financial suicide because to get that 54 in your pocket, you're probably going to have to take 70,000 out.
Yeah,
which you can never put back in. And then if you don't get rid of the credit cards, you're going to use them again.
Yes.
So
there's a thin line.
Referral to you.
Right. So my favorite saying is, and I always use my hand, there's a thin line between financial strategy and financial disaster. So financial strategy is, putting money into an RSP, potentially taking some out to pay off debt, depending on, tax implications, again, advice. But, financial disaster is, one, like we said, taking too much out, paying too much tax, not gaining that benefit of paying off the interest on the credit cards, or, doing it again and again. And if you're just going to put money into RSP and then you're going to pull it all out before you retire and you're going to pay off your debt, you haven't accomplished anything in my viewpoint.
Exactly. Now, there are a few situations where, I've suggested, yes, we take it out on a, like we'll RIF it out, which is a registered retirement income fund. That's what happens with your RRSP when you retire. But there are situations, and there was one I had a client, he wanted to withdraw 20,000 because he wanted to buy a motorcycle. So what we did, instead of him taking that out and getting taxed on 20,000, bumping his income up, and you're not bumped up by 20,000, your income is probably 25 because they took the withholding tax out. So we came up with a plan that he could go get his motorcycle, and the loan payment, we would RIF it out of his RRSP. So say the loan payment was $300 a month, we would set up an account that we would have $300 a month come from the RRSP or turn it into a RIF. Then he would pay interest or income only for that 1 year. So 12 times 300, right? So he's not paying that 20,000, rather he's only paying a small portion. So in that case, you're making your RRSP work for you, but it's in a good way rather than pulling the whole amount out, getting a huge tax bill. This way he gets to have it both. He gets the motorcycle. His budget doesn't move. We just funnel some of that money from the RRSP.
Cool. And so you mentioned a few times RIF, LIF, and LIRAs, and I just want to mention that, those are basically income funds. So just, and you can add on to this, but basically, so, and I forgot that when you're 70, I think you said 71, and you have
71.
to 71,
Yes.
you transferred over. So what you're doing is you're putting it into an investment that now you have to take out a certain amount per year or per month over some period of time. Can you just elaborate on that a little bit?
There's RRSPs are usually flipped right into an RRIF, which is a registered retirement income fund. They're very flexible. So, and I think for the first year, you don't have to take any money at all if you don't want to, but you do have to start taking money out. Many plans, you could say, my budget, I need $300 a month, or I need $3,000 a month. The only thing you have to keep in mind, the more you take out, the quicker that fund is going to deplete and you'll have no money. So if you're coming from a $55,000 salary a year and you had 150 in your RRSP, well, if you maintain your lifestyle, you're not going to get 3 years out of that RIF. So we have to have a look and we have to budget it. And then I'll take my tax program in, we'll run the taxes and say, okay, if you take this much money on a monthly basis, this is what you're going to pay in tax. So a lot of the times we can fine tune it so that it's not a huge shock at the end of the year. So that's usually what happens with an RRSP. It rolls usually into an RRIF.
And typically, sorry, go ahead. You go ahead.
No.
Well, I was just going to say, now I was just going to say that I just wanted to clarify, I guess, but I think I'm right in this. Once it's in a RIF, LIF, or LIRA, so some kind of income fund, then you are, and we already answered it, but I'm just pulling it out. You are limited in terms of what you can take out. So, at that point, you're not going to be pulling large sums of money out to pay off a credit card, for example. No, which is exactly. I like when that happens because it's like protects it.
Right. And a LIF and LIRA are both, they're locked in money, which means it was a non-contributory pension. So the employer put the money in your pension plan. You didn't have to. Like an RRSP is a money purchase plan.
Yes.
This locked in money is just non-contributory. So you didn't put a penny in. So your employer did. Your employer makes up the rules. And here's the rule.
And that was that the LIF or the LIRA?
They're both. They're locked
both
in.
of them. So RIF is my money went into an income fund.
Right.
LIF and LIRA is the employer's money they put aside for me went in. Okay.
And they make up the rules because they put the money in. That money has to last you to age 84. So just for easy math, say you were 64 and you wanted to take that money and you had 30,000. You can't say I need $340 a month. There's a calculation that's done every year. And just in short term, that money has to last you from age 64 when you start withdrawing it to age 84. That's 20 years. How long do you think 30,000 is going to last? I mean, it will last unless you die. That's the only way to get out of them. But you're getting a very small pension from that.
And people are living longer, right? I mean, this is part of what, is happening is we are living, we're in some cases, we're retiring earlier. Some people are, you can take your pensions earlier and then we're living longer. So you have more time to fill. And, that's a concern depending on what you've managed to set aside.
That's right. And people are taking their pension early, their Canada pension, they never get that money back. So if you took it at 60 rather than 65, you're losing about 30% of your Canada pension. You will never get it back.
Wow. I'm just going to pop in with my usual as we kind of start to come up to the hour. So yeah, anyone viewing, if you have a question on where you should save your money, question about tax-free savings accounts, RRSPs, education savings plans, which we didn't talk about, but I'm going to ask you about in a moment, just post it in comments and we'll be happy to answer that. And I was curious as you were talking about that and people, and turning them into these income funds. And again, this is a weird question. I'm not trying to ask it, but I'm sure you'll know what I'm saying. Is there, like, what percentage of people would you say don't benefit fully from their RRSP? And again, does that make sense? Like they actually, they're limited by what they can take out and they don't, they keep it low so they don't have extra income tax and, quite honestly die before they get the full benefit of it.
Well, if they die before they get the full benefit, it will go to their spouse. Never put it into your estate because it becomes taxable at that point.
Yes.
But keeping in mind always that your RRSP, as you were putting your money in, you were getting a benefit from it right away. It's the same, to me, it's the same as if I died before I started receiving old age security.
Because you're getting the benefit when you put it in, like that
Right.
tax benefit.
Exactly.
So that's what you want to focus on. Again,
Right.
I think we've highlighted this like 3 times now. It's so important to look at what you're doing with the benefit you're getting. And how many of us, and I'm going to put my hand in the air, that, you get those refunds and you don't maybe strategically think about it. Now I'm in a debt repayment stage, so that's where mine tends to go. But not always, we get that lump sum of money and we're like, oh, I can buy stuff or do something. And I think, there needs to be a mindset shift and almost you almost want to look at your tax refund you're getting, knowing that what portion's coming from your RSP, and almost look at that like I'm spending this, potential retirement benefit money. How am I going to do that is going to work the best for me right now? And that's going to serve me the best right now.
Exactly. So, and that's what I mean. Each plan, you cannot, as you know, in your business, you can't paint a brush and say, here's the rule, because each situation is different.
Yeah.
And I'm a broker, so I can go find different products. So it's not buy off the shelf. I can find you the best product that fits your needs. And that's one of the things I love about my business. Every person is different. Every person has their own story.
Yeah. I'm the same way. I just, I worked in this industry for 10 years and then I joke and say I got bit by the entrepreneurial bug. And so I left to sow my entrepreneurial oats. So I went and did some other stuff for 7 years and, which I loved and was fascinating. And then I came back to the industry in 2005. So a few years ago. But I came back a different person. And, I found the job very monotonous in those first 10 years. I was kind of doing the same thing. And I didn't really appreciate the variance. But when I came back, this different person and kind of viewed it differently and brought more of myself to what I bring to others. There just hasn't been a dull moment. I'm looking at it going, how did I get bored in the first 10 years in this? Because now I'm, 16 years back and I love every day. Every client conversation is different. I love dealing with individuals. I love dealing with creditors. Like it's just, to me, it's fascinating. I have to say. I want to add that I'm also, and this is, I do impose a little bit of my own personal opinions here, but you're probably going to agree with me. I'm a huge fan of people leaving money in their RRSPs. And I get this question asked a lot because someone will come in because they have a lot of debt. And one of the things they can potentially do is pull their RRSP money out and pay their debt. Some or all of it. And not that I'm advocating don't pay your debt, but my concern is that I see too many people living in poverty in retirement. We don't know what's going to happen with our pension income. RRSPs are creditor protected mostly, except for what a person's put in the last year. And so there are other ways to compromise your debt, meaning pay some percentage back without touching your RRSP. And I'm just going to say it. I'm an advocate of it. I think people need that retirement money. I think there's social disaster in our future if we're trying to live off of just government pension, especially now with housing prices and rent and groceries and gas. Don't even get me started. I went over $100 filling up my tank today for the first time. $107. I wanted to faint at the gas station. And it wasn't, I didn't lose sight of the fact that gas is 166 0.67, whatever it was. Anyway, it's like 666 because it's an evil
I'm
price.
too.
I'm just saying that.
It's evil.
So, it's evil.
It's evil.
Yeah, it is. So the price of food, the price of gas, the price of housing, like you're not going to live off CPP and OAS. So take this.
25% of your income is
Yeah.
CPP. That's it.
Take this poop seriously. That's my message that I want to put out there. And I think that you know, as we kind of start to wind this down a little bit, really the key pieces of advice that I'm really pulling out of this are a diverse strategy. So RRSPs and tax-free savings accounts, there's a place for both of them. It sounds like having both of them makes sense. I will be in touch to start my tax-free savings account because I haven't done that yet. And also, you know, and again, I'm a huge advocate of have a financial planner, you know, have someone review it, have someone that really cares about your future and helping take you where you want to go. And I know you and I, because we're friends and you're my financial planner, I can ask you questions anytime. We can sit down anytime. But you know, and I'll be the first to admit it, and I'll put my hand in the air because I think, you know, we don't like to talk about money and we're not vulnerable enough with it. I'm slow out of the gate. I was self-employed for 7 years. I didn't contribute to a pension plan. When I went back to work, it was all I could do to feed the family. I was late starting. I mean, you know all this because you're my gal. And so I started late, and, you know, I'm trying to do the best I can and catch up. I'm still the sole income earner of a family of 4. It's not without its challenges. But I do make it a priority as my situation adjusts to look at what is the best way for me to plan. And quite frankly, I'm feeling not prepared for retirement. Again, I'll be honest and I won't lie. And I know there's lots of people out there that feel exactly the same way. So, what advice would you give to someone in that situation where, you know, they're not feeling ready? And just before you answer that, and they're looking at their limits on their assessments, the amount they can put in, and feeling, quite frankly, dejected by the fact that that will never happen for them. There you go. How is that for multiple?
Okay. Well, to respond with that is you eat a whale one bite at a time. So you could start saving on a regular basis. Pay yourself first. I don't know how many times I talk to a potential client and it's, I can't afford it. I can't afford to save. And you can't afford not to. This is my thought and my feeling. So if you do a little bits at a time, we could start up a tax-free savings account and you can put up to $25 a month in it. But that's going to compound and that's going to grow. So don't feel overwhelmed, I think would be my message. Is there is a way. There's always going to be some kind of a solution. I also find too, pay yourself first is a golden rule of financial planning. And I also find that if you don't pay yourself first, you'll be a victim your whole life, because when you get your paycheck, Revenue Canada's already had their hand into it. EI's had their hand into it. After everybody's taken their portion, they send you the rest. So I would start saving on a monthly basis, a weekly, whatever you can. And then after a very short period, that becomes habit. And that's what you'll be doing. And then you'll start bumping it up. So it's not the $25 a month. If that's all you can afford, that's fine. But once you get comfortable with that and you start to see it growth, it becomes a habit, and then it becomes kind of an addiction. You want to see that money grow, and you're thinking, I can put $50 a month in, or I could put $150 a month in. And because it's for you. And that helps with your own self-worth. So be a victor, don't be a victim.
Oh, I love that. Be a victor, don't be a victim. I love that you said that, and I'm going to unpack a few things around it just because I want to pull them out and highlight them. First of all, start with $25 a month. Because starting with something, you're right, it gets the ball rolling. It starts the momentum. I know when I started with you, even though I didn't feel like I could do anything, I think I started with $50 a month because that was all I could do. And you're right. Once you start to do it, and it's almost like you build that savings muscle. So once you start to do it and it's part of your plan, then you start to see opportunities where you can do more. Whereas if you never start doing it, you kind of have your blinders on and you don't see that. So I wanted to just pull that piece out. The pay yourself first. Again, you are worth it. You deserve it, and nobody else is going to do it for you. So I wanted to pull that piece out. And then the other one is you and I are now talking about helping my son, Finn, start an RRSP, $25 a month, because I'm trying to get him on the bandwagon early because I wish I had. And so he'll get that momentum and get started. And you know, I think that's another little piece that I just want to pull out too, you know, and if anyone's listening or watching this, that's, you know, in their 20s, and you have your first job, like the way that this grows for you, you know, just start doing that, start working that muscle right away. And then you have money for potentially down payment on a home later on. Like there's other things you could potentially leverage it for. I will tell you the greatest risk will be leaving the money there, not taking it out for a whim. So you definitely want to be disciplined that way.
Exactly. And just on a quick note, Finn, we're not putting him in an RSP right now. We're going to do the tax-free savings account.
Oh, yes, you told me that.
Right?
Yes.
Because his income is low right now. He's young. So
yes.
That amount is still going to grow, but we're going to do it in a tax-free.
And then when he's ready and needs to, he can flip it over,
right.
which is exactly what we started talking
yes.
about. Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
Awesome. Just quickly before we go, because I had it on my list of things to mention, education savings plans.
Mm-hmm.
And actually there's a few, and we don't have a lot of time, so it'll be more of an overview, but there's RESP, so registered education savings plans. And now there's DSPs, right? RDSPs, registered disability savings plans.
Disabilities.
Yeah. Is there another one? Is it just those two?
No, those are the two.
And they're very similar, right?
Very well, no. The disability is for people who have disabilities, and they're not working, so they're not contributing to an RRSP. So this is the same as an RRSP. So the government has set up sort of a banking account for them. The RRSP is a registered education savings account. So that's the one where the government will kick in a little bit, keeping in mind there are restrictions to it. And when the money is withdrawn, it's taxable. So it will be taxable in the student's hands.
Yeah.
Kind of
so
a way.
Yeah, you go ahead.
Okay. The way I kind of go around it is if the child or the young person is all set up an insurance product, and it's a universal insurance product. So it's a combination of insurance and investing. So you're insuring them. So if they ever come down with an illness, and forbid with COVID and such, they're insured. They have life insurance, and that'll last for life. But with a universal policy, there's a savings component in it, and that money is tax free. They can do whatever they want with it, and it's tax free.
Okay. Again, so much I want to unpack. So first of all, my mom took out an insurance policy on me when I was young. And then when I got older, I learned about it and she gave it to me. And then I cashed it in and spent the money. And now I kick myself in the ass over that one. So I just want to mention that part. And
that was a whole life policy.
Yes, thank you. And the other thing with the RESP and the RDSP, I was thinking they were the same because in the sense that I was thinking the government gave you grant money for both, but they don't. You get grant money for the education savings plan, but the RDSP simply allows you to put money in an RRSP without earnable income, but it's exactly like an RRSP.
Exactly. And you're disabled. So you're not able to earn an income, but you're still going to get old. You are still going to retire. So they set this up not that long ago for that purpose.
Okay. And those individuals, I mean, they have to put that money in themselves. I mean, they're contributing the money. It's part of their savings, their long-term savings. Well, there you go. Something I did not know. And now I know. Okay. So, so we have about 2 minutes left. We're coming up to the top of the hour. This was great. I picked up a lot of tidbits, and I will definitely be in touch because I think I need to fine tune my planning strategy now after this conversation. And I'm very excited to get Finn started with his, and even you talking about the insurance, like that's something that I when you start early, it can be so much less expensive than when you wait and start putting it in later. So, I think if you're in your 20s, there's so much possibility if you just talk to someone and put stuff in place early and stick to it. Right?
Yes. It becomes a habit.
Yeah. Make it a part of your habit early. Yeah. And I'm just going to check and see if I have, I don't think I have questions here. So everybody's just listening, which is perfectly fine. Okay. So last comment. So first of all, before I close off, so I do want to thank Maureen for spending this lunch hour with me and hanging out with me and sharing this information. And of course, this will go on long after this hour. It's going to be on the replay. So for those working today, they'll get to see it later. If you're watching the replay, just put hashtag replay in so that we know. I like to get a sense of who's watching it. And again, if you have any questions on the replay, please put them in and we will answer them. So as we close down, I would like to know what one last piece of advice would you offer? What's the one thing you're going to pull out of all of that to close us off with?
Well, what I always say when I introduce myself, or I use it as a hook, is people don't plan to fail, they fail to plan. So plan. Have your poop in a group and get a plan. As much, as little, as tiny as it is, it will grow into exactly what you want when you're ready to use it.
Yeah. I love that. And I'm going to add, and mine's going to be similar to what you said, paralysis by analysis. So don't not do anything because you can't do everything. Like simply open the conversation, start talking to a financial planner. I happen to know a really good one in the screen right here. And just say, just find out what you need to do, and then meet yourself where you are and do what you can do. If I had waited to start until I was able to do what I needed to do, I would never have started. And so I think it's really important just to meet yourself where you are, start where you can. And I love that. Right. If you fail to plan, you plan to fail. So it's all part of your plan.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And have a goal. Have a goal. Then we can work. I ask a lot of my clients, what do you want? What's your goal? Once I know what that is, then I can think of ways to get them there.
Yeah. And I think that points out how unique it is for everyone. So you can go research all you want and talk to anybody else who's done something. But at the end of the day, it comes down to your own particular certain situation and what makes sense for you.
Exactly.
Awesome. All right. So I am going to end this broadcast, but don't you go anywhere, Maureen. We're going to pop back into the studio and hang out for a few minutes before we're done. And thanks to all of those who viewed and watched. And I see we got some likes and loves, and thank you for all of that. And everyone have a good rest of their day. All right. You stick around, Maureen.
And a great weekend.
Oh, yes. And a great weekend. Yes. All right. So don't you go anywhere. I'm going to hit end broadcast here. We'll talk later, folks.